Carol Moseley Braun. That's CarolMoseleyBraun.
All right, we can begin. Just tell your stories. This is Marquette Park, March of 1966, your role in that, and how it reflects today.
Well, my mother was a medical technician at a hospital in Marquette Park. And so I would take her to work, whatever. I mean, I was the driver at that point, family driver, and so I took her to work, and that's how I learned about the march that was going to take place in Marquette Park. And my mother, of course, was afraid for my safety, so she warned me not to do it because I could get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. But I was a teenager, right? So when teenagers just do that which the spirit moves them to do without much thought for the consequences or without fear. And so I wound up going to the march on my own in any event. And it was a couple of things that stand out in my mind about it. One, I'm really glad I did. In hindsight, it was one of the high points in my early life and getting involved with the civil rights movement at a time when it made a true difference. I mean, it wasn't as brave as the Freedom Riders, et cetera, but close because Chicago was very violent and very resistant to integration in those days. The second point I would raise is that I saw such examples of heroism, quiet heroism, of people standing for the truth, for right, and in spite of the ugliness that came at them. I was there when Dr. King got hit by a rock, and he was just so gracious and so calm in all of it. I mean, I would have thrown the rock back personally at the time, but but he didn't. He just took his handkerchief out and wiped where the rock had hit him on his forehead, and so that was a lesson for me. I learned a lot watching him. I also learned from the people in the march. I mean, I was paired with the organizer of the march paired us newbies with people who were veterans of the civil rights marches in the South, and I was paired with this white guy who he was a veteran. I was brand new, but and for me at the time, seeing people screaming and yelling and throwing things, screaming obscenities, racist epithets and the like, was really quite shocking. He did not seem to be shocked by it. In fact, he was totally nonplussed by the whole thing. And his calming influence was very, very important for me. I have no idea who this person was, but I can tell you that his being calm through all of that was a very important lesson for me in that early part of my life. Also, I'm sorry. Also, marching in front of me were some nuns. And I had, gone to Catholic school at the time and when I was in grammar school. And so I was totally shocked to listen to some of the things that were being hurled at them. And they, again, just took it in stride and were very calm. They met the ugliness with nonviolence. And again, that was the lesson. That was the second most important lesson that I took away from all of that. I wish I had taken it better because frankly, I've on occasion have lost my temper, but at the same time, nobody lost their temper. And that was very, very important. The third thing that I got from the march was there was a kid on the sidewalk who was screaming and yelling epithets. And I don't even know if he knew what he was saying. And he kept saying, semi-humans go home, semi-humans go home. And he had a sign that said SEMI humans. And I looked at him and we made eye contact. I said, no, it's not semi, it's semi-humans. He said, oh, thanks. So semi-humans go home. So it was a lesson all around. One that you should also be calm and meet violence with nonviolence, not let it get to you and not get flustered. And so that was a very important lesson. And the fact that I was able to communicate with this kid who was kind of my age at the time. I mean, I was still a teenager. So he was maybe a little younger than me, but not much. But the fact is we connected at that moment. And I tried to give him some instruction on how to pronounce the sign he had, and he was grateful for it. So, and the fact that it was semi-humans, go home it was irrelevant. So we actually were able to connect on a human level, which again was another lesson that stayed with me for the rest of my life. The notion that you can reach people or reach out to people, no matter how opposite it may seem, that if you make the effort, there is some basis on which you can communicate and find common ground.
That's beautiful. What a lesson and lesson for the current present generation as well. Would you like to share anything that you see now going on with what you saw then, and any words of wisdoms to the youth that are coming in?
I have to tell you, I am so proud of this generation. It's like these kids have figured out what we were marching for, and they have taken it to the next level. Black and white, they're out there protesting racism, protesting the discrimination, and they've decided they're not having it. And to me, that is the best. That says that the movement succeeded, that we were on the right track, that we succeeded, because you've now got a whole generation of people, again, come together across race boundaries. They don't see, and they respect each other. But it's not that they don't see race. They do see race, but they respect, and Black lives do matter. And so I think that's just very, very important. And again, to me, that's encouraging that this generation coming along recognizes what we were trying to communicate, and that they have learned from it, and they are going forward.
How do you see this movement and what's gone on in the past? How do you see the future? And what's your hope for the future?
Well, like I said, what I think is, again, politics proceeds from culture. And the culture has evolved, I think, enough that these kids are not going to have a lot of the stuff that we've had to deal with in the past. The kind of racism that we saw, they get it now, and they do understand the microaggressions. They understand all of that, and I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by the fact that the young people recognize that the boxes that limited us are irrelevant, and really are a hindrance to progress for all of humanity. They see humanity in whatever form, whether it has to do with race or sexuality or gender. They are open to those things. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful testament to the message that Dr. King was attempting to communicate, to what he was trying to do, what the civil rights movement was about, that we have to break down these barriers, break down these boxes, and let humanity express itself in the fullness of its positive messages. So I am encouraged. I mean, I'm not in any way upset with what these kids are doing. I think it's wonderful, and I really am encouraged by the fact that, again, when I was a teenager, I was out there with Dr. King, in spite of the potential danger. Oh, I neglect to tell one part of the story, which is that the veterans, they put us kids in the center. That's how it was I got to be so close to Dr. King, because he was in the middle of the circle, and the next group were the newbies like myself and teen kids and whatnot. Then around us were some of the people who had marched before, and then around them was almost like the Praetorian Guard. They were the men who had been in marches before, who knew the drill and who knew how to react and were unintimidated by it. And so again, they had the structure for the march that didn't allow for people to lose their temper or just to go off and respond or react to the ugliness that was coming at them. The police were no help. I mean, if anything, the police were encouraging the people who were being nasty and mean. But again, I think we've moved forward and we have pushed the envelope. And now I hope we will reap the rewards of what those movements were.
The march was about fair housing. What was the results of that? Was it effective? And when did that come about in the history of the U.S.?
We are still working on that issue. Fair housing has not been achieved. and largely because it's about money. I mean, the only thing that this society really, the thing that this society respects the most is money. And that's tragic, particularly when you have generations that have gone before who, stole the land from the Indians, from the Native Americans, stole the labor from African Americans, and built a society, built wealth based on those crimes. Now, were they crimes against humanity? Absolutely. But we are moving forward because I think the fact that we recognize that that's what happened and that we are prepared to face the truth of the past. The stories have to be told, and they're beginning to be told. I mean, they are really beginning to be told. I don't want to date this, but yesterday, the new president-elect nominated the first Native American to be the Secretary of the Department of Interior. That's the agency that deals with the tribes and deals with public lands, and that has been so mired in its own racism for the last several years that it's a scandal. And so he's, if there's a message in that, it's what goes around comes around. And I hope that there's a lesson in that for the people right now who are still resisting that humanity and truth will out, and that goodness will prevail. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful message for us, for our generation, and for our times.
With the current climate and the separation of political extremes, how do you see us moving forward collectively, and what do you think we need to do as a people? And would that include all races?
It has to. I mean, there's no way you can move forward without including everybody. If you don't include everybody, what you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot for all intents and purposes. If you don't include women, you eliminate half of the talent pool that might otherwise be available to you. If you eliminate Black people, you eliminate a lot of the creativity that might have otherwise been available to the whole society. You eliminate Native Americans, you eliminate the rich stories and the histories that they and the philosophies that they brought to this land. And so I just think that people are learning that we are one people, we are one humanity, we are moving forward, hopefully into the 21st century. If there's an upside to this horrible pandemic we've been through, that's it. It's that people are now forced to step back and take a look at where we are as a society as a whole. And because of that step back, we will make progress again as people, as humanity. And I think that's a positive, good thing.